Welcome to the Happy Soul Podcast. My name is Melissa, and this is Sammi. We are diving deep into conversations that connect and inspire. Stories of resilience, triumph, and transformation. Stories that take us to the heart of human connection. Please note that opinions of our guests do not necessarily reflect those of this podcast. Please listen with your kindness and an open mind. Each story shared is authentic and vulnerable. Let's embrace our differences with empathy, knowing every voice enriches us. Together, let's cultivate a community of respect and curiosity. Thank you for listening. Now sit back, relax, and prepare to be inspired.
Welcome to the Happy Soul Podcast, everybody. Today we are here with Bryan Saint-Louis. So I met Bryan actually through Amanda Lytle, who just had her episode on the podcast. She introduced us because she hosted her own podcast, and her and Bryan connected, I think Bryan said 3 years ago, through their own own podcasts. Bryan now is a podcast host. He's an inspirational speaker. He's a youth leadership coach. His Instagram is BSL Speaks, and he speaks to schools and youth and teachers and parents alike, from my understanding, about how we can better equip the upcoming generations and the leaders that are, I think, how does the way that you put it? They're not our leaders of tomorrow. They're our
leaders right now.
They're our leaders right now. Yeah, and I just love it. It's so beautiful because it's so true. We think that we often put this thing out there like kids aren't actually doing anything until they're adults, but they're doing things their whole lives. Yeah. And we have to empower that. And I just love that message about what you do. But before we get right into the work that you do, first off, welcome to the Happy Soul Podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
We love this. I'm loving the setup. I'm loving just the energy already. It's great. It's great. Thank you so much, Sammi, and thank you, Melissa. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we're
perfect
happy you're here.
Lots of laughter here. So I want to ask you, just to get started, like, how did you get into the work that you're doing now with inspiring youth, inspiring teachers, inspiring parents to work more cohesively together?
Yeah. It sounds like a lot. Inspiring youth, inspiring teachers, parents. Like, when did this happen, right? I was about 20 years old, and I remembered, because this was back when I was working with my father, and he's a pastor of a church. And I had these kids, maybe about 50, 70 kids that were in the basement of a church, a big church, right? So they were in the basement, and myself and two other people were the ones who were supposed to basically, teach them for this whole month. And about a week, or maybe even a few days later, the other two kind of dipped out. Mm-hmm. And I found myself, in there with a group of 50 to 70 kids. And I was like, how am I supposed to teach all of these kids? They don't really know me that well either.
And you're 20?
I'm 20. Yeah, I'm 20 at the time. And, I'm supposed to teach the Bible. I know I was in school for theology and all of that stuff, but I'm thinking, man, like, this is going to be difficult. One of the things that really struck me at that moment was, okay, how can I just get to know them? And how do I understand what they're going through instead of me trying to tell them what they need to know right now? And in those conversations, things just started to explode. Kids started opening up. Kids were crying. Kids were like, wow, thank you for listening to us. And I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Like, this is all new territory for me. But I'm sitting back, and of course, like, sometimes I even had some people around my age who would come and help me out and everything of that nature.
Yeah.
And then, but for me, we were facilitating discussion. And one of the things that I learned the most was I need to stop talking to people. I need to start conversing with them. Mm-hmm. Let's bring this into a conversation where you and I I'm not better than you. I'm not greater than you. We're equal in this. And how can I just connect and understand where you are so then I can better serve you too?
Yeah.
And so that was a start or a precipice that got me into this concept of working with youth. That was the first time that I had to. And actually, that's when I started loving it. So yeah, that was the beginning. That was the first moment there was another moment that changed the whole perspective, but for sure that was the first moment.
What was the moment that changed the whole perspective?
Yeah, I knew you were gonna say that.
You can see it.
We're too curious.
I'm not gonna lie, I figured out you. So again, I was in school for theology.
Okay.
And I spent 4 years doing that. And I was working at a juvenile now, and so I'm 21 at this time. I had kids who were 18 years old, 17. The youngest we had was 9. That was a hard one to see, because she didn't belong there. I think it was just a mother who didn't know what she was doing, and she called the cops on her own little kid, and it was just like, she spent the night there. That was pretty much it. Mm-hmm. So that was the youngest that I saw, and I was like, man, it was tough. And so this is when I was in Michigan, because I went to school in the Michigan area. When that whole I spent 2 years there just learning. I mean, I spent time with kids who, murdered, kids who had done egregious crimes, like sexual crimes to people as well. You're looking at kids who breaking and entering, violence, part of gangs, all of this different stuff. But the thing that really changed my perspective was trying to get to this place where when I see them, I didn't see them for what they did, but I tried to just see them as a human being first. Mm. That was the number one thing that I walked in every single day. I said, I'm going to just see them as human beings, give them the respect that they deserve at the end of the day, despite what they've done. Because what I learned, and I probably should have done this earlier, but I never looked at their history. Mm-hmm. Mm. And it was very purposeful, because I said to myself, I want to make sure I understand where they are and who they are. But then when you read the history, you see, okay, this is not just a single case where this kid did this.
Yeah.
There's a line, just like a long trace of history that shows why this kid is the way that he is or she is today. Mm. What happened that got him or her to do these actions, this and this and that. And then you start, this is where I think I've learned to be non-judgmental. Because I used to be very judgmental growing up. Like, why is this person doing this? I used to always, peek at the way that people thought. And that was the moment that really helped me to realize there's so much more about people that you don't know. Mm. And if you don't know it, you can't judge their story for who they are right now. So what really changed it all for me was, went back to my school. There was this she's young at heart. I'll say this. But this elderly woman, and she would come every weekend, probably in her 70s or 80s. Come every weekend to the juvenile. She was working with these kids. I was just like, she has no fear. Like this, because like these kids, just finished beating up a staff member, and then she's walking in like, hey guys, how you doing? I was just like, this woman has no fear. I went to my school and I said, hey, look, there's a whole bunch of these kids that are at the juvie that need mentorship. They need someone who they can connect to, whatever the case may be. We can do more. Mm-hmm. I can't do anything because this is where I work. But, this is like the work that I'm here sometimes 8, sometimes 16 hours in a day, and, we're just pushing through. But I was thinking that this could be a great opportunity for my school and some people to be able to connect with these youth juveniles who need mentors. Mm. And that's when they said, I talked to some people about this, some people who had authority to be able to try to do something. But their response was just more fear than it was to make a difference. Mm-hmm. And I asked myself the question at that moment. I said, if this is what pastoral ministry is about, I don't know if I really want it. And That was the first, because I was 5 years old when I said I want to be a pastor.
Oh,
my
wow.
dad,
Whoa.
yeah, I was probably just crazy, to be honest. I'm just a kid, you know, I see my father, I see my grandfather, or, you know, I see my uncles, and I was just like, oh yeah, you know, I'm the youngest, no one else wants to do it, I'll take the torch, yeah, I want to be a pastor. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But that was probably the first time, and I've questioned it before, but that was the first time that I really deliberately said, like, this is what this is really about. And it's not about the people. It's not about building our youth. It's not about being there for, because like even the Bible talks about things like being there for people in prisons and in those centers, being there for widows and individuals who need our support. And so I said, if we're not living that, then I don't know if that's what I really want to do.
Yeah.
And that's where my youth, I would say this is where my youth development, mindset, empowerment just skyrocketed.
Yeah.
That's where I wanted to just move forward with that. Yeah.
So cool.
But probably such a huge reason as to why you're able to speak to people and make such a difference with, like, I've seen some of the posts of the conversations kids have come and said to you after some presentation you've done about your choices and things like that. I know that's not necessarily exactly what you're talking about here, but that realization you had about not speaking at people, but listening to them and connecting with them.
Yeah.
And what you're just saying, like all of that combined in the not judging someone for what they've done, just seeing them as a person, and like that's probably why you're able to speak and connect to them so well and to so many people, because most people come in and they just, you know, think of teachers you had growing up, right? Like
sure.
They just speak at you and they demand respect and they demand that you listen, but they never want to listen to you. And I feel like that's also a very common parenting theme and pastoral
100%.
theme and all that, right?
100%.
So that's why you're able to make such a difference, is because you're there to listen.
Let me ask you guys a question. Who's the teacher that you remember the most?
My grade 1 teacher.
Why?
I don't know.
That's far back. That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
What about you?
I don't know.
You don't have any?
No, I do. I'm like, to pick one. I had a religion teacher. I went to Catholic school, and I had a religion teacher who, that would be one. And then I had a social teacher. And I would say that, sorry, go ahead with your question, because I think.
No, well, the question is, like, what is it that made you so connected to that person? That you felt like that was one of your favorite teachers?
Because they were listening. I think that's like, when I say those two teachers, I mean, there's more, but when I think about those two, they were actively listening to their students too. They wanted to learn about their students. They wanted to know about them, and they weren't just like the religion teacher. That one strikes me because he wasn't just like, this is the curriculum, we're sticking to this is the right way, this is the wrong way. He was like, hey, let's learn about the world. I'm not teaching you about one religion. I'm going to teach you about as many as we can come up with, as many as we can talk about and think about, and we're going to have conversations about this. It wasn't like, so like you're going into this class thinking you're going to learn one way, and they're going to teach you one way, and he didn't do that. And that was surprising because that's not what we thought we were going into, but it was conversational. It was like they were both listening to us and wanted to connect with us and advocated for us, which I think that's the thing that
I love that.
Yeah.
That's a great answer.
Right?
It is a really good answer. I would actually say, so my grade 1 is the first one that comes to mind, but as you're talking, there's like one that was in grade 9, and he, I'm pretty sure he was gay. I don't think he ever came out. And I'm just saying this because I think he had his defenses up with his high school students because it wasn't as accepted.
No, not at all. No.
Then, right? And so I remember going into a class, and this one student walked in late, and he just scolded this kid. You probably smoked your lunch. He was so rude to this kid. You smoked your lunch. You're not here to learn. Like, you might as well not be here. Like, just really spoke harshly to this student. And I was so mad. I was like, you can't talk to him like that. You have no idea what he did for lunch. You have no idea. Like, you didn't see him. And even if he did, who cares? He's still at class. Like, he did nothing rude to you. You don't know what his home life is like. Like, I totally snapped on the teacher. I was like, you can't do this. And
Girl.
Okay, I feel energy right now. I'm like, yo, I don't want to mess with you.
Girl.
I don't want to mess with Sam. That's real.
I know. So people are like, when did you learn this? I'm like, I can think back to elementary school of standing up to people. Anyways, And I was so mad. And the teacher was really defensive at the time and like kicked me out of class. And then I went home and my mom was like, well, what happened? And I told her. And the next day at class, the teacher actually like had a conversation with me and completely changed his tune about how he engaged with his students and how he engaged with that. He publicly apologized to that student. And then me and that teacher had a great relationship. And so I'd say like that was probably also sticks out. And it's because he maybe had this opinion and this world, but he was totally open, apparently, to being called out on it and changing. Wow. So,
okay, so I'm going to talk about this for a second, because I think like when it comes to this whole concept like youth empowerment, one of the greatest things that we can do as adults is be open to correction. Because so many of us believe that, you know, once I'm at this stage of my life, I am, I don't know, I'm 33 right now. I'm 33, right? I've gone through life so much more than you have. What can you teach me? How dare you try to correct me?
Yeah.
Right? There's too much that I've gone through that you can't be able to speak into me in that way. One of the things that has helped me bridge these gaps with these kids is when I've done something wrong. Number one, I always tell them, even in the beginning, I'm like, hey man, if you ever catch me doing something X, Y, and Z, call me out on it.
Yeah.
I make it very public. And it's one of the first things I always talk about too. When it happens, then I'm just like, you're right. I don't even try to defend myself. You're right. Won't do it again. Or you're right. That was a wrong way for me to be able to speak into that. I probably should have done it a certain way. Because once we start breaking down these defenses, they now will be much more willing to speak to us. Because the whole thing is, if I'm trying to mentor, if I'm trying to help you, and I can't get into that place where I can end up helping you to get to that spot in your life, then there's nothing that I'll be able to do in order for me to be able to lead you. So the best way for me to do that first is to make sure that the defenses are low, so that you know this is not just a one-way street, but we can both now speak to each other in that way. So I love that your teacher, even though that's how he presented himself the first time, he was willing to publicly apologize.
Totally.
That public apology is not the same as an apology that's done in the back.
Yeah.
Right? If you went just to that kid and said, hey, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. Yeah, cool. But it was a public display that needs now a public apology. And so I'm glad that was the way that he decided to conduct himself.
Yeah, me too. Huge. Yeah, it really stands out to me because I can think of the teachers that I stood up to and it didn't go that way.
Like, you don't want to mess with like the people that, well, I was gonna say the people that you love, but like not just that. Like, you see anybody being treated unfairly, she's like, you don't want to mess with people.
You would do well with my Speak Up program.
Yeah, seriously.
I'm like, geez.
Moving along, I'm getting awkward.
No. Something else she loves is when people pump up our tires.
Okay.
Can we give you more compliments?
No. So, do you, this mentality, hopefully this isn't a challenging question. Do you feel that you uphold that same call me on it with your kids?
So that's a very good question. And that is, so I'm gonna say this real quick. My wife has called me out and she said, Bryan, you give way more leniency to people than you do to me. And I was like, dang.
Oh, ouch, that hurt.
I was like, yeah, that hurt. And I was like, okay. And I had to look at how it is. And I hate the fact that this happens, but a lot of times the people who are closest to, right, we tend to sometimes hurt them the most.
My cat's driving me crazy. Sorry, keep going.
No, what do you want to do something about
No,
it?
I'm thinking about throwing her outside, but then she might just sit at the door and whine too. She just wants to be out of the back room. It's okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's okay.
Your wife called you on it, is what you were saying.
Yes. And basically, I had to start seeing how my actions, the way that I am towards her or towards others, making sure that I give that same grace, that same mercy, that same understanding to her as well. I just hold her, like, I just see her so much of her potential too. Sometimes you're just like, yeah, you gotta, I try to push her a little bit more, but then in that, I think that it doesn't necessarily help, right? And so I had to learn that skill. So going back to your question, I found myself doing the same thing to my first child, where I was a lot harder on him than I was on other kids. Mind you, I'm not saying like too hard, because he was only like 2 at the time. But I said to myself, if I'm going to act any type of way to anyone else, I have to first lead that at my house.
Yeah.
I have to be able to do this with my own children. I have to be able to, this is the statement that has been parading in my mind. I never want another child to love me more than my own child.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Hits in the heart.
and this is the thing, because like this is the one that sees me the most. He's around. He's going to see the worst and the best of me. Most of these kids, they only see the best, right? Of course, they see some moments and such, but they see a lot more of me. If my children don't love me, but other kids love me, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And so that was something that has, again, paraded in my mind so much. And I said to myself, no matter what, my kids are going to love me. And I'm going to do everything that I can to show that. Just yesterday, I kind of raised my voice a little bit. I was like, guys, come on, man. Like, Daddy, you're yelling. Well, you're right. Daddy's sorry.
Yeah.
And I was like, can we talk about why I'm yelling though? And then, and then it's like, he was like, okay. I was like, can we, like, we need to be able to move forward just a little bit better. But what it's teaching me is I got to communicate a little bit differently with that in that moment, so that we're not putting ourselves in a position where I have to yell, right? Or maybe that means taking care of something earlier so that this doesn't have to happen now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, to answer your question, I am very intentional on how I'm raising my children with empathy, because I don't want to give radical empathy to other people, and I'm not giving it to the people in my own household.
Radical empathy.
Oh man,
I really like that sentence.
I'm writing this down.
Radical empathy, yes.
Okay. Can I go?
Go, yeah.
Maybe you just answered this question, and now I have 2, but maybe you just answered this question, but I was watching your reels, and I have to tell you, like, for anybody who hasn't, like, deep dive into these reels, I was telling Sammi, I was like, I was emotional watching them.
Yo, chill.
I was. I know. I was, because it was really speaking to the parent in me mostly. Like, I was just like, hearing you speak about how you connect with kids is like, I'm like, yes, I want all people, anybody who's in it. I was going to say, like, as I was preparing for this conversation, I was like, thinking about how are we going to intro you. And one of the things I was going to say is, if you are in a position of, any sort of position of I don't know, authority is the right thing to say, but with kids. So like teachers, parents, and then I thought, wait, all adults are in some sort of,
that's right.
We're all in some sort of authority to children. We're all showing example to kids. We're all, whether we're parents or teachers or just the person buying milk to the family buying milk, like in the grocery store, walking next to, kids are watching all of us adults, right? So like, I was just really moved by a lot of the messages you were saying. And one of the things that you said was, you were talking about being a strong leader for our children. And maybe you just answered this question, but what does it take to be a strong leader for our children?
Oh man, that's a good one. Yeah, because leadership, I always throw it back to the person who's leading. It's not even about as much as we need to care about the people who we're about to lead. You first got to take care of what's going on in your own mind. Introspection is one of the most massive, most important to me at least, I could be wrong, but I believe the more introspective we are to being able to understand why we think the way that we think, why we feel the way that we feel, that allows us to be able, and checking ourselves in those moments, that allows us the opportunity to be able to say, hey, you know, this is something I need to see right now. This is something that's going on in my mind that isn't right. This is something that, oh, this is great. Okay, let's keep moving with this, right? But ultimately, the introspection allows us to really analyze the way that we think and feel and our actions. And so now when I'm leading, the first thing that I need to take care of is how am I leading properly? Like what is this is model leadership is probably the one, if not the most important of all leadership.
Yeah.
For instance, at home, your kids will not remember as much as you say. They will always remember what you do.
Yeah.
Point blank. My father, 15 years old, in front of the whole church, talk about public apology, in front of thousands of people, or about 1,000 people. He made a private issue in front of the board and with one of the youth at his church. And he said that the way that he spoke to that youth was not the best way, right? Done in private. Now, the next week or 2 weeks later, I had no idea what was going on. Probably 98% of the people that had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
And during like the pastor's corner, he makes a public apology to that one person in front of the whole church.
Good for him.
And I was like, what the heck? Like I never saw something like that.
Yeah.
That changed my whole, you talk about model leadership. Now, this is what I need to attain to.
Yeah.
And so my father, he did say something, of course, but he modeled what it looks like to apologize.
In so many ways.
In so many ways.
Yeah.
And so now I'm sitting there and I'm like, wow, this is what it looks like. This is humility. And so when somebody told me, right, oh, Bryan, don't make apologies because it shows a sign of weakness. I was like, I don't need to listen to you.
Yeah.
Because I've had someone who taught me differently. I had someone who was able to show me a better way. And that way brought growth in the place that he was in. And so for me, modeling leadership, the way that you choose to act, the way that you choose to live, the way that, like, all of that, what they see is what they'll end up wanting to model in their lives as well.
Yeah.
And so I could talk about it as much as I want. I could tell you everything that you need to know about leadership. If you're not living it, it's a waste of time to me. And so when you go to these schools, you go to these organizations, and they talk about, oh yeah, empathy, oh yeah, we care, we're compassionate, but then, you know, you're laying off 40% of your people right away. That's not empathy, right? You're not thinking about individuals in that way. When you say, well, we care about self-care of our people, of our students or such, but then you're overworking them, all the time, and you don't give them even the opportunity to care for themselves, right? What you do is a lot more important than what you say. And so no matter what the case may be, that's why, like, just basically to answer your question, is modeling leadership or modeled leadership is always going to be the most important in that. And so that's where it has to start. And it has to start with you. So yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
How do you combat if a child has been led in a not great direction?
Yeah. Radical empathy.
Okay, tell us about radical empathy.
Radical empathy. So, I'll give you a story first.
Yes.
Before I answer the question, so you can try to gauge what I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
Pause. Are we good on time?
Yeah, I was just looking. We're only 10. We're fine. Yeah.
Okay.
I've got us booked till 11:30, so.
How long is this podcast?
Oh, it will probably keep it around an hour.
Okay.
But I don't know what time we started.
It can
so.
be as long as we
Okay.
want, really.
I just want to make sure, like, we're.
No, we're booked till 11:30. My kids aren't coming back till 12:30. We're good.
Okay. first week that I came to the school, I was working at an at-risk school for kids, and this was back in the States. And kid basically was doing a program, and job training program. You're outside, it's hot, all this different stuff, right? And he was talking about how he doesn't love this, like he hates this. But mind you, they get certifications and such afterwards, after they graduate, that they can take into the job force. He basically said, "Man, I'm not no slave, N-word," and he was just like, and then everyone just like stopped, and then he kind of saw me, and then I was the only black person in that school too. There's not a lot of black educators. It's a whole different conversation we need to talk about one day. But I'm there, and everyone was looking at like, what is he going to do? So I got up.
Like everybody's looking at you.
Yeah, everyone's looking at me.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah,
okay.
they didn't say it, but they're all looking. Even the principal at the time, like teachers, everyone's just like, what's he gonna do? I'm like, why is this following me? Number one. But I was like, all right, fine. I'll take care of this. So I go and I speak to him, and he's like red faced, just can't look at me in the eye. And I was just like, look, you already know what you said was completely wrong, right? He was like, yeah. So he didn't even say anything. I said, we're gonna have a conversation at lunch tomorrow. He said, okay. Or whatever. I don't think he said anything to me. I can't fully remember at that point. The next day, everyone was wondering what was gonna happen. Took him out to lunch, like Dairy Queen, right across the street from the school. Paid for his lunch. We walk in, even before all of that, and everyone's like staring at us. And they're like, why is, just eyes, just beaming. It was a small town, so I grew up in New York. I didn't say that, but I grew up in New York, going into like Indiana, small town place after school. It's very, very different. He sits down, I sit down. He's like, why is everyone staring at us? I was like, probably because of something you said yesterday, right? Like, it's the same line that has to do with it. Why is this black man with this like 17-year-old or whatever, white boy? And I sat back and I was like, the words that we say, could be very impactful. I was like, but I also need you to understand that, we can move forward from this, and it doesn't have to be the same way.
Yeah.
Just had a quick conversation. Again, I paid for his lunch, right? I'm talking about actions. Radical empathy is a lot more on the concept of action-based empathy than just understanding and imagining.
Yeah.
This is why, I'll maybe talk about it a little bit more, but this is something that I've coined that has helped me in so many different aspects working with youth, right? Ultimately, what I did right there, I showed him a way that was different than what his parents taught.
Yeah.
Because his parents taught him, and his brother told me the same thing, that people that look like me, we're not on the same page. We're not on the same equal footing.
Oh, that breaks my heart.
The only way I can do or change that is to show you a different way.
Yeah.
Again, I could say anything I want to say. It don't matter.
Yep.
I took them out with me. I spent time with them. I connected with them. They saw me as a different person. They got to really know Bryan Saint-Louis. And that was what changed their perspective. If you go into a space and a kid is acting a certain way, and you really think that your one sentence or your one word is going to change their philosophy, come on. It takes time.
Yeah.
How much time do you have is a question.
Yeah.
Because if they're being, just think about it just very logically in this way. If I'm spending time, let's say, it's like a mastery in a sense, right? It takes 10,000 hours for you to master a certain aspect of your life. If they've already spent 10,000 hours working on hating people, how much more hours do you think it's going to take for you now to have to combat that intentionally.
Yeah.
And so you have to become an authority in that kid's life. And you have to be able to be intentional with how you're choosing to work through those situations day in and day out. And so it takes a lot of time. I'm gonna be honest with you. This is not a quick fix. And a lot of teachers, like they don't like that because kids come in very disrespectful, right? You can't counteract disrespect with disrespect. You can't counteract hate with more hate or with frustration. When these kids come in and they're disrespectful, be like, "What's up, man? Can I get a hug instead?" Like switch it up, like for a second, and it confuses their brain.
Wow.
Like, why is this person acting nice to me? I didn't do this to them.
Yeah.
So the only way really to be able to do that is to try to find a way to change the worldview, the perspective, but in a way that they're going to want to listen.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Like, as you were speaking, I was like, you matched his disrespect with respect. And like, even if you'd said nothing to him at lunch, the fact that you did what you did, even if no words were spoken, would have been enough. And like you said, the actions would have been enough to show him the way that you should be as a person.
That's it.
Not
So good.
You gotta fight it that much more. Can't just be even on equal footing. It has to be even a little bit harder or stronger than what that hatred is fueling. And kind of what you just said, I use this phrase, like, you can't expect respect out of a kid who's only been taught to disrespect. And so the only way for you to show respect now is for you, or for him to learn respect, is for you to model that respect. And him to trust you as an authority that this is probably the better way.
And also probably that you, as the person modeling the respect, you can't expect that you model it one time and they're going to change. It's a consistent modeling over and over and over again. And eventually that kid, maybe not until they're an adult, will see which person they should be modeling and which person they shouldn't be modeling.
Wow.
It's tough because, especially when it comes to like parents, I don't ever bash parents. I try my best to run away from that. And especially now as a parent myself, you know. It's like, I understand too. And one of the things I teach the kids, like for instance, I'm going to a school to speak, and one of the things I teach the kids is you got to show empathy to people you don't like. You got to show empathy to people who don't like you. This is not just about people, you know, caring about other individuals and just showing it to people who you like. That's easy. How can I show empathy to someone who doesn't even like me? Because that person might not have that kind of love and attention that they need, and maybe your actions or you speaking up for them at that right time might just be the thing that changes their perspective too.
Wow.
So it's hard. Like, I'm not out here saying anything that's easy to do, because when someone disrespects you, you've been hurt for number one, and you want to retaliate. But that's why it takes time to really think. Just sit back. Don't react right away. And one of the things that, for instance, I taught a lot with the school, and I think helped my philosophy came from the 7 Habits of Effective Teens. And it was one of the phrases: seek first to understand, then to be understood. And that has been a strong philosophy of mine that I continue to use to this day.
Totally.
So good.
There's another story we met. We just recently made some friends, and they, our kids go to school together, and they're Afghani. And the husband was telling us a story about how he was at work. He was at work. I was going to fidget too much. And somebody at his work was being super disrespectful about him, like saying that they're all terrorists and all these things. And at work, yeah. And he works in.
Fired.
I know, he was in the trades. And so he said, like, it kept happening. He just didn't say anything. Like, he never responded. He just, every day he showed up and just kept treating that guy with the same way that he treated everybody else. And months later, eventually the guy comes and says kind of the same thing. Like, why don't you ever respond to me? Why don't you ever get mad at me? Why don't you ever respond to all these things that I'm saying? And he was like, because I know that you just don't know what you're talking about. I know that you're just uneducated right now. And he's like, and I can't, that's your choice. If you ever choose to get educated, like, that's it. And now they like get along really well. And I was like, good for you. Like, it's exactly that. It's just like that kid, right? If you react in the way that they've been told you're going to react, they'll never learn. They'll never listen.
My palms are sweating.
And palms needs to speak, arms are heavy.
Wow.
And it's funny when you're talking about like the responding with respect and you can't just go around liking the people. And I'm not saying this to like brag on myself. My husband was making fun of me the other day. He's like, you have the weirdest form of revenge. Because like whenever somebody does something, I'm like, I'm going to show that person how you should treat people. Just go and like do all the nice things. And I'm like, I'm not doing it to suck up. I'm not doing it to look like a nice person. I'm doing it because like, just because you're an asshole doesn't mean I'm going to be an asshole back.
There you go. That alone is how I think if we want to make the change that we want to see in other people, right, we can't respond with the same thing that was given to us.
Yeah.
So like you just said, like I'm not, if you're not going to, or if you're getting this from them, I can't respond back with that same energy, man.
Yeah.
And it has to be something that has to change again the way that they're thinking right through that. Yeah, so that's I love that you do that too. I could tell already though. You seem like that. I need justice, like. But it's imperative. If we're not, you. I always say it like this: these kids, if you're being taught a certain way, the only way you can really switch it up is to try to teach a different way.
Yeah.
I can't teach with the same pen or the same brush or the same canvas that hurt their mind in the first place.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good way to put it.
How can I now? It's not about erasing that canvas. We're now replacing it with something new.
Yeah.
And so that's what gives them the viewpoint of how can we now build this out in a way that makes sense for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think when the two of you were talking earlier about like people of authority and how can you combat that and the speaking through being a leader and stuff like that. Like I was thinking about this and I was like, it's really almost removing the word authority and replacing it with leaders. Ooh. Because if you think you have authority over someone, you're going to try to control them and you're trying to speak at them. But if you're trying to lead, and if you understand what the actual definition of leadership is, it's exactly what you just said. It's leading from who you are and how your actions. It doesn't mean that you're perfect.
No, not at all.
None of us are perfect, but that you always are. Even when you do make those mistakes, you're trying to correct those mistakes, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Goosebumps.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. But I mean, I even thinking about when I was watching your reel about talking to the kids and the kids coming, it was your talk about the choices you make, I think is.
Yeah.
And how someone came up and said like, I'm never going to vape again or whatever, but you never talked about not vaping. You were just talking about choices.
Yeah.
And I think about the people who came and spoke in when I was in school, and you'd have people come talk to you about like no drugs and
don't do this.
Don't do this. If you have sex, you're going to get pregnant and die. Like all those things, right? I mean, that's from Mean Girls, but need some comic relief for you.
Oh man!
You just need to get rid of the sweat. They speak at you and they condemn you for your choices and condemn you for being a teenager and learning, instead of being like, instead of condemning the choices that kids are making, you're empowering the choices that kids are making, which I think is really cool.
It's working, or at least I hope it works. The more, the more I'm doing it, the better I become at it too. It's not something that's just an easy viewpoint and perspective. A lot of, like, for instance, I don't talk about anti-racism. A lot of people are like, why don't you talk about anti-racism? Why I talk about empathy?
Same thing.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
I use a positive spin to it.
Yeah.
And I don't go so deep into what is negative. I'd rather empower the positive choice. And that positive choice is, you show what can actually happen when we're making those positive choices, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, even the vaping presentation, I talk about vaping in a let's say in an hour. I probably talk about it for like 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Six concrete 7 minutes of just so what it can do for you or what it can do to you. But I more so talk about the industry of vaping, and I talk about how much money they make, and I talk about how much, marketing they're doing, and I start asking them the question, why do you think that they're doing so much of this when they're not supposed to be marketing to kids under the age of 18?
Yeah.
I just want them to think critically.
Totally.
All the information out there, I'm not going to give them anything new. They're living in an age where information is out. It's just literally anywhere you look. They can go on ChatGPT. What does vaping do to me? Come on, I'm not giving them anything new.
Yeah.
What I'm giving them is the opportunity for them to start thinking critically, which I believe some schools don't do as much. But if we can get them to start thinking, why am I doing the things that I'm doing? That, I believe, is what really brings in that transformation in those presentations that I do.
Yeah.
I don't even tell the kids, don't say the N-word. Like when I do those type of presentations, I don't ever say, don't vape, don't drink, because once I say that, guess what? They're like, forget you, man, I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And then because they're in that rebellion stage of their life.
It's just teenagers are just 2-year-olds in their teenage phase. Like they're just toddlers looking for their independence.
That's a fact. Like, I'm not trying to fight that. I'd rather become someone that you can trust to say, should I vape? I'd be like, well, why are you asking me? Do you want me to say yes or no? You just want to hear an answer from me, but at the end of the day, you already know what's going on in your mind. Empower it back to them.
Yeah.
Give them that choice. I don't have an answer for them.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So it's just that's the thing. There's a lot that I try to do in this, and it's not easy to. How do I say it? It's not always easy to implement because you're not gonna see quick results.
No.
And a lot of people want to see quick results.
Yeah.
That's just not gonna happen. If we want true transformation, typically speaking, it takes time.
Yeah.
And so I would rather work through that kid and build her up, where they can understand where it's at, and then they start making their own choices instead of me making choices for them. Because when I'm gone, what happens?
Yeah, exactly.
Totally.
They gotta do it themselves.
Yeah.
So good.
So what is your hope for the work that you do? Like, how do you see it, excuse me, how do you see it growing and expanding, and what kind of impact do you, like how big do you hope that gets, that you can make that difference?
It's global. It's global, yeah. I'm even going to Singapore in June, right?
Awesome.
I have a leadership camp that I'm doing out there through Powerful Youth Leadership. They're awesome. There's an organization that I knew the founder. He came on my podcast because I found them. I was like, oh wow, this is amazing. And he invited me out to become one of the directors for their program last summer. And so having that opportunity just blew my mind. And so I'm able to continue to do work this summer as well. So I'll be in Singapore and I'll be in the UK this summer.
Wow.
But
That's awesome.
in that, there's like the work is going to be global, but the work is also changing. Because as much as I care about youth development and building up our youth in society, I have to realize I am one person with one mindset, right, one perspective. If I want this philosophy to transcend me, I need to also be able to speak to the adults in the lives of these kids.
Yeah.
And so that's why a lot of my work now is also not just speaking to kids and youth and teens and young adults, but it's to start giving it to the adults in the lives of these kids as well. So parents, teachers, people who spend the most time with these kids, so that they can, mind you, I know a lot of people who do this already, right? So I don't need to teach you in this way. Maybe I do a different variation of what you do, but at the end of the day, we're on the same team with this, but there are a lot of people who don't, right? And so how can I teach this to those who have a lot of youth in their space? So that it's not just Bryan, but radical empathy is the philosophy, that individuals can now use no matter where they go. And I want to just be very clear. Radical empathy is not agreement, or it's not enabling. In fact, it's a lot more assertive and accountable for the actions that are being done around us. And that also means that we have to make some of the tougher decisions in order for us to do something about the problems that we're seeing. Going back to your example, for instance, radical empathy was, you saw that student being mistreated, you spoke up, you did something about it. A lot of kids may have felt something about it. Man, why do you treat him like that? Radical empathy says, I'm going to act up right now and make that happen so that we can see a difference either right now or at least in the near future, which happened. And so it's actually holding people a lot more accountable for their actions, but understanding where someone came from to make that action in the first place. That's all it is. It's just me willing to understand people more.
Yeah.
But I'm still making the tough decisions that need to happen. And so I'm hoping that this translates into working with a lot more adults as well. And then right now, the work that I'm doing, I'm really hoping to get into a lot more universities so that those who are going into the workplace, those who are teaching, those who are serving, because that's what we all do. We serve in some way, shape, or form. They can live with that radical empathy so that this is becoming a part of their culture of where they are, no matter where they are, in the hospitals, in schools, in corporate, no matter where it is, with their startups, they are treating people better, and which will ultimately help their businesses and their organizations grow better anyway. Because the more we treat people better, the better our ability is to help them. And if you really want to build a business, at the end of the day, I mean, this is a whole different topic, but at the end of the day, if you want to build a business that's going to serve someone, it has to be done in a way that the person knows that you care in the first place.
Absolutely.
So that's why I'm hoping this will start translating to that.
Yeah, I love that. Amazing. It's so good. Have you read the Matthew McConaughey book Green Lights?
I have not, but I've heard about it.
Okay, I talk about it all the time, just because this one's part it's good, but this one part where he's in, I don't remember. I think it's somewhere in South Africa, but it doesn't matter. Actually, might just, anyways, he's sitting at a table with two men, and these two men are arguing about some topic. I don't know what it was. Just disagreeing. Not arguing, but they're just loudly speaking at each other, disagreeing. And Matthew says, he pipes in and says, like, no, I think I agree with so-and-so. And they both turn on him and look, and they're like, it's not about do you agree? It's about do you understand? And so their argument isn't about, and they're not actually arguing, they're just that's their culture, is to speak loudly at each other. And we're not arguing to try to sway the other person to our perspective. We're just trying to understand each other's perspective. And I think that's the biggest thing is I can disagree with what you just said or what you just said or whatever, it doesn't matter, but can we still respect each other, and can we still just choose to understand each other's perspective even if we don't agree with it?
This is the thing that, going back to radical empathy, for instance, this whole concept really is about bridging the gap between individuals who are not willing to sit down at a table of commonality. There's so much that we have more in common with each other than we have in disagreement with each other. But we're not willing to sit down at the table of commonality. And I'm like, I would rather try to understand your perspective, but I don't have to agree with everything that you believe or everything that you say. 100%. That's not my position. My position is to respect you. I believe respect is a baseline, number one. As much as people believe that respect has to be earned, I don't necessarily agree with that. I believe that if I see someone, right, that person should be getting all of my respect, despite what they do, especially if I don't know the person. Why am I disrespecting someone who I do not know? If my respect ends up kind of going down after things that have been done or such that nature, it's possible, yes, but we can still choose to respect someone who has, again, going back to our prior conversation, still choose to respect someone who has disrespected us as well.
Yeah.
The whole thing is this. I don't believe I have to agree with everyone. There's there's too many perspectives in this world.
Yeah.
I mean, go to the bathroom. You have someone who has the toilet paper. Like
he's judging my toilet paper now, guys.
I didn't even look at that. But like, you know, if it's over or under, and some people, you're crazy. You put the milk first, or you put the milk after. And just to be honest, like if you put milk first, I'm sorry, it's just something. You know, I'm just. but like ultimately, as long as your decisions are not affecting someone's humanity, I should not be able to berate you as an individual. We should be able to sit down and talk about it, man. And I think that's one of the issues that many of us have in society. They don't sit down and just disagree. They don't sit down and when, I would even say disagree. Just seek to understand. They don't sit down and just converse through the problem. Through like, can you understand where I'm coming from with this? Instead of having to win an argument, because that's most people. We come in and we want to win. It's competitive. I want to win this point, and once I win this point, I feel better about myself, and I care less about the way that you feel. So instead of me trying to win points, why don't we try to win relationships and make that the essence of our conversations? Because then now we're just sitting down and being able to just, let me see, you're human, I'm human, we're talking, let's talk. You're coming from, I don't know, Slovenia, I'm coming from Haiti, you're coming from China, I'm coming from Canada. Well, all right, let me hear your perspective. Let me see what's going on. Let me understand where you are or who you are. Because that's what the global perspective that we teach a lot, or global citizenship, that's how we're going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But it starts with being able to see every single person or the human race as one race. Yeah. And I think that will translate to how we end up working with each other as well.
Yeah. I agree. Totally. I think what you were saying, like, people think respect has to be earned, and it's like, I think there is, totally disagree with me on this if you want, there's a level of respect that can be earned, but there's basic human respect that everybody deserves, regardless of who you are or where you come from.
That's a good way to put it.
Like, because you're gonna respect somebody who's influenced you personally
for sure
more, and not just respect them, but respect their opinions, their perspectives, those kinds of things, the way that they live their life,
for sure, more
than a stranger on the street. But the way that you interact with that person, the way that you treat that person as a living being, should be the same across the board. It shouldn't matter if they're rich or poor or black or white or live here or live there or have a big house or a small house. You treat all humans with the same respect, but certain people can earn a higher mental respect, I should say, but not like a physical respect. Does that make sense?
I think that's a great way to put it. Yeah, because I know some people, they're like, well, I respect this person more than I respect this person. And I'm like, yeah, I agree. And I like the way you put that. It's like this mental respect comparatively to this physical or emotional, maybe, respect. You know, there is that level. Like, I have a deep level of respect for my father or my mother or mentors that have poured into me more than, like you said, more than someone who I just know on the street. But, and this is a real example, I'm out there on the street and I could talk to someone and say, I'm not better than you, you're not better than me, as I was giving him some food, because he didn't want to accept it. He was experiencing homelessness, and I had a bag of food. He didn't want to accept it, and I was just like, he's like, someone else deserves this more. I said, dude, I looked at him straight up in the eye. I said, dude, I'm not better than you. I know I'm in a suit right now. I'm not better than you. And that, like, broke down the walls of the fence.
I'm just here to help.
And I just want to help you, man.
Yeah.
And just that alone was just like, okay. And then we talked, gave him the food. Have a good day, man.
Yeah.
I respect him. I may not have the same level of respect as my mentor, right? I don't really know you.
Yeah.
But as you said, there's a physical respect and there's a mental respect that we have for people. I like the way you break that down. I'm gonna try to find a way to, in my own, like,
stealing my stuff now, Bryan.
I'm gonna credit it. I'm just credit it. No, and that's one thing though, for real though. If somebody says something, I always try to credit it as best as possible.
I'm the same. Yeah, I'm just kidding. But no, it's really true, and I think we forget that. So, do you have any other questions? Otherwise, I'll.
I think I could come up with a gazillion.
Same. I feel like it could go for forever.
Like,
it's always the problem.
I was actually like, we don't need to go into this right now because we'll get into a whole thing with it. But I was like, as I was watching your content, I was like, we've been wanting to have a conversation about Gaza, and you had some really great stuff about that, and I was like, oh man, we can get into a great conversation.
I really want to have a conversation about that, but we haven't.
That's another time.
That's another time. It's a big topic.
Yeah.
Right. I'm just.
It's a tough situation, man.
I don't know. I'm just inspired, and I'm so grateful that you came and spent some time with us this morning. And like, I'm seriously inspired. I'm like going through. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna do this. I'm like, I have all these things I want to do now. Like,
That's awesome.
Okay. So I have one more question for you.
Sure.
Obviously, this is what you do for a living, so maybe you've already got this in your head. But if you could say one simple message to like maybe a parent who's listening, or a youth that's listening, or a teacher, you can pick whatever you want, teacher that's listening, that maybe is word of encouragement or something that maybe they could hear that would make a difference in how they treat their parent, treat their kid, treat their teacher, treat their student, or whatever, what would you say?
There's a lot that just went through my head, by the way.
Sorry, I know it was a lot. I was like, I don't want to pick this for you. You pick which one you want to talk to.
This is the death space that I was talking about.
It's all good. Totally. There's been one time where I forgot to lock my cat up, and I had to go run upstairs and move my cat around in the middle of recording. It's fine. You can cut it all out. Or here, I'll make it simpler then.
Okay. I was coming with it.
Okay.
I just want to make sure it's articulate. You're worthy of love, and everyone else around you is also worthy of that same love. Let's try to make sure that as we want love to be given to us a certain way, let's also think about those in our direct care who we have responsibility or leadership over, how we can truly care for people and love them the way that we would have first wanted to be loved as well. It's kind of what's going on through my mind right now, because a lot of people, two things. Some people sometimes don't know how to be loved, and so they give that love back to others. But that's why, or that type of love back to others, that's why I always think about the empathetic viewpoint is, if we know that this is something that's hurt us, maybe this is not something that we should give to others as well. Mm-hmm. And now this will take us to a place where we can think about how this person needs the best type, or how to value this person, how to show that person the worth that they are in themselves. So it takes time to think through it, but it allows us to think about what's best for them and not just what's best about how I want to give it as well. Yeah.
That's so good. Thank you so much, Bryan, for coming down to a stranger's house to record a podcast and trusting the connection that Amanda made. It was so great to have you on here.
I appreciate that.
Super excited to release this episode.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really had a great time. I already said from the jump, I said the vibes were great. As soon as I walked in, the first thing I was thinking to myself was, we'll see how this is going when I walk into the door. And first thing I felt it was like, it's warm, it's great. I was like, all right, cool, we're good.
Perfect. Awesome. That's great.
If not, it would have been a lot shorter of an episode.
I gotta get out of here.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. To help support the growth of this podcast, please feel free to leave us a review, follow us on socials, or recommend us to your friends. Your support honestly means the world to us. With love, Sammi and Melissa.